All right. Let's see. Looking at who's here now, I don't see any new faces, so we can move right on to outstanding RFCs. This will probably be short. I closed a couple this morning. I think the only one here that's outstanding is on RFC to remove Ruby from the Jammy full stack. This is kind of a long simmering conversation we've been having about stuff that's in the full stack. The history behind what's actually included as stuff in the full stack is that it's basically a replica of what was in the CF Linux FS number stacks that were part of Cloud Foundry. And in those stacks, we include Ruby and Python because a number of build packs at the point in time where the stacks were designed were actually written in Ruby and Python. And so we include those dependencies because we needed them in order to actually execute the build packs themselves. This is not true of the vast majority, at least 100% of the build packs we maintain in Paketo are not written in Ruby. And so they don't have this requirement. And so we just have this extra baggage of like an extra language runtime that's in the stack that can have CVEs and stuff filed against it. This is not to mention that like what ends up happening with a Ruby package in Ubuntu is like it basically just gets frozen in time at the point when they actually do the release. So, you know, you've got an Ubuntu LTS release that's like 5 years, but Ruby's only going to maintain a patch version of their language for, I think, 3 years. So you have 2 years on the end where you've got a patch version of your Ruby interpreter that's completely out of support. So we just think it's best to remove this. We know that for some folks, we might want to categorize this as a breaking change, and I think we'll bump the major version of the stack accordingly to indicate that there's a breaking change here. But we think that there's enough mitigations for folks to get around this. I think the biggest one being you can probably pull in Ruby using the MRI build pack if it's really something you have a dependency on. But yeah, that's what this one's about. No, go ahead.
For what it's worth, at least the Jammy Tiny stack is in a pre 1.0 version, so probably you don't want to do a major bump and make it a 1.0. I suppose the full is similarly versioned.
I'm sure it is, yeah. At some point, we are going to want to have a 1.0 release of the Jammy stacks. I think that's a reasonable thing for us to do. Now I mentioned in describing that Python's also included there. Python's actually something we want to target to remove as well, but it is wrapped up in a number of other packages. So there's a bunch of other packages that we install or have dependencies on that they themselves have a dependency on some sort of Python interpreter at some point. So we have to go through and evaluate each one of those piecemeal and figure out what the impact would be and whether or not we can get away with removing Python as well from the stack. That would be a longer term goal, but Ruby was pretty simple. It's just remove the one package and it goes away. Anyway, take a look if you're interested, or if you have a use case that you think mandates the addition of Ruby. But yeah. I think that was the only outstanding RFC. This brings us to CNB updates and questions. I don't have any updates. I don't know if they even had a working group meeting last week. Doesn't sound like anyone else knows either. I can't remember if I mentioned this at the last working group meeting. At least one of the working group meetings, I think 2 prior, I was able to watch a demonstration of the stack extension work, and that was actually pretty cool. So if you have time, maybe hunt down that particular working group meeting, and Natalie gives like a demo of the stack extension stuff. it was pretty illuminating. I didn't realize that run extensions aren't really extensions. They're more like run image replacements. I didn't realize that that was kind of the phase 1 target, and they've landed on that. And I don't know, it may impact some of our short-term decision making, but Stack Extensions at least seems to be making some good progress. Next up is project update. Do we have any important project updates that anyone wants to make at this point?
Support for the Ruby build pack will soon be available in the Jamie builders. And Jamie support for the Ruby build packs is already available, just not in the builders yet.
Awesome. I think that leaves us really only with PHP, which the team is working on right at this moment. So that should probably land hopefully very, very soon. Okay, this leads us to the open mic questions, discussion topics. We've got one here. Get a default stack descriptor file for create stack.
Yeah, so this was an issue I think opened by Sophie. I took a bit of a look at this and created a proof of concept PR for this to get this discussion started here. The create step command of gem needs some descriptor file that currently is usually created by copying it from some other stack. And yeah, there was an idea if there could be a better way, kind of a sub command for creating this. So yeah, I just drafted something little that, yeah, of course, lacks tests and stuff. Right, this is only to get a discussion started. So if you want to look at this, if you think you have some opinion on this, have a look there and share what you think about this. Looking for feedback here.
Yeah, I saw your PR. Thank you for putting that together. I just have not had a chance after a long weekend to respond yet, but I'll definitely take a look. I think that I first filed that issue when the create stack command came into existence, and I wasn't sure how difficult it would be or confusing for users of the create stack command to copy and paste things, and maybe like if it would be confusing knowing exactly what was required versus what was a choice in the Paketo stacks. So that's kind of where this issue came from. But we haven't necessarily seen any other people responding to this issue saying that this is something that they want or are confused about. But if you have any feedback and you think that this would be helpful, I'm definitely open to it still. It just kind of wasn't a high priority thing because no one in the community had signaled that this would be useful until now.
Yeah, maybe it could also be that we just say, okay, we don't need it, right? So I'm totally open to that as well. I just saw the issue hanging around in the inbox and thought I give it a shot to either close it for good or have a solution, right?
Frankly speaking, our repo where we produce a stack is still like saying Paketo tiny stack. So it's a full copy of the whole repo, including the stack toml file. So that's how we got started. I've got a slightly related question. Like I asked that for myself the first time I saw the command. Shouldn't that actually be pack stack create? So did we ever consider contributing that to pack? I mean, it can pack and create builders, so why not stacks? And it's like, I think we actually looked at making this distribution independent, right? There were even discussions about what Jam should do and shouldn't do when it came to Ubuntu, like these streams of updates. So it seems to be rather independent. So that could be an idea. Maybe that's then less control on the Paketo side. So maybe that's one of the reasons we might not want to go that way. But
Yeah, I think one of the things was that we weren't sure if we were going to have to, or we're going to want to put stuff in there that was like Paketo specific. I haven't done, I have to refresh my memory when I like look at it again to see if there's anything that currently is in there that wouldn't be just like completely agnostic to the entire CMB space. I can't imagine there is, but who knows? It's been a while since I looked at that code.
Do you think the upstream project would be receptive to like a stack related improvement to Pack, given like the current state of stack extensions and like the future of stacks in CNB?
That's a good question. Sure.
I mean, I think stacks still exist even after this point in the future, right? It's just that the definition of them slightly changes. Mostly around like the stack ID kind of becomes a non-entity, and instead there are these kind of like target OS definitions. Yeah, and then extensions kind of play on top of that, but that's a builder concept or like an aggregate concept.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I'm looking forward to those extension things to be able to keep maintaining a very tiny stack and just tell separate people who need specific extra packages that we are not going to add it to the default stack that we provide, and don't go to provide the second one. But if you end up needing 20, 30 more packages on a regular basis, you probably don't want to use extensions for them, right? For then always pulling them in during the individual application image builds. So if you have something that really needs space, or even full like Ruby and others with large requirements for additional packages, then you probably want to have separate stacks anyway. So I guess stacks won't vanish. I don't know though, maybe.
Yeah, we'll have to see how that plays out. But yeah, it's worth considering for sure. So do we feel like we've reached any sort of consensus on the direction for this particular issue, or are we going to take this conversation offline?
I will definitely take, well, on the original issue of the stack descriptor file creation, I will take a look at right after this and leave some comments.
Great, sounds good. All right, and then it looked like we got another question here. This one's from Jericho, I believe. Modifying layers of other build packs, is that allowed?
Yeah, so I have a requirement in one of the apps that I'm working on where you basically need to change the Go installation. So I've created a build pack that basically uses the Go build pack to rebuild Go again, and then overwrite the original Go disk that was put there in the layer in the first place. It seems to work, but I don't know if that's brittle. I just want to make sure, like, is it supposed to be read only? Is it going to be read only in the future? You know, I just don't know if this is okay. I mean, it works, but is this something I shouldn't do? Find another way to do it. Any suggestions?
I think according to the spec, it's supposed to not be allowed, but it's not enforced by the lifecycle. I know that I don't know if the issue is still open, but there was at some point an issue that someone filed that basically was saying in between every build pack, it should mark the layers that are currently on the file system as like read only. And then that next build pack would only be able to read from them and would actually fail if it tried to write to any of the layers. I know for us, we've had several instances where we've done this accidentally. For example, in the Python build packs, if you just install Python and then you try to run a Python command as default configured, it actually like compiles Python in that layer, like a bunch of kind of optimization compiled files, and they get dropped all over the layer. So it actually like mutates the layer. And it was kind of an unintentional side effect of just like running a Python command that we didn't realize. And we only really discovered it when we started to like look into how to do better reproducible builds for the Python images. So for us, we've always treated that as a bug. In thinking about how you're describing your actual use case, the first thing that came to mind was that you maybe could get away with like just adding another layer that's not like, rather than replacing the Go layer, you could like add another layer because of how the actual path stuff works. I'd have to double check this, but I think it's prefixed so that like stuff that gets added from build packs that are later end up on the front of the path. So like your version of Go, if you installed like a second version of Go, it would be the one that gets found instead of, you know, the default one. If you're playing around with just the implementation build packs, like you're not using the top level Go build pack, then you might be able to finagle it a little bit differently. My only concern there is about if you're reusing the Go build pack, that's going to want to, well, it's going to pull in Go at build time. Do you want Go at in the launch image?
No, just the runtime. Yeah, what I do is I pull in Go disk first, then I do my other build pack that does whatever it does, and then afterwards I use the Go meta build pack to get the rest of the, you know, I think it's Go mod vend or something like that. But yeah, I mean, this is helpful. You know, it's like I have something that works right now, but it's clearly not the ideal solution long term. So I will look into doing the path stuff. Or I mean, I guess if I also just create another build pack that provides Go, right, then the Go and the Go meta build pack wouldn't be used, right? It would just use, because it's already being provided by a previous build pack, then it wouldn't reuse it. Is that right?
Well, the way that the build plan ends up resolving is that like you have some build packs that require Go, two build packs that say they provide it. Both of them will join the actual build plan. And what ends up happening is whichever one is the first to actually execute and say, like when it updates its build plan that it actually provided Go, the next one will basically get an empty build plan. So like, it could kind of like technically at that point in time, it's supposed to do nothing, right? This is like the technical behavior or like what's the kind of preferred behavior from the API, but you could choose to not follow the like suggestion there. You could say like, I know better. I know that in this case and how this is being resolved that I have a Go dependency that's supposed to be resolved.
And if you put it in the front, that's at least how it works on the Java build pack front. So if you put one of the Java implementation providing, like the JVM providing build packs before the Java meta build pack, then the which one is it? Soft Liberica build pack will not install the JVM. That's actually you can document for Java as a way of choosing your JVM provider. It's, I guess, a more usual use case on the JVM side than it might be for Go. And so you might have to have a look there, but probably there's at least even then hints in the detect or build implementations of the Java build pack that could help in terms of how maybe even the Go build pack could change to support that use case. On the other hand side, you could also just package a meta build pack, right? So that's maybe something worth considering. And as a third thing, I'm pointing to that multiple times already. There's Daniel Mikusa's Google Doc right now, not more than that, no RFC, to actually pull dependencies out of the build packs themselves so that you as a builder, maintainer, or even user could provide your dependencies, including Go. and they wouldn't be baked into the build packs. But I think that's a longer step to there. Like it's the state currently is, I think it is in a Google Doc, and there was a discussion between Daniel and Sophie, but not much more. And it's basically also pending on all the other dependency management stories for Buildpacks that do the compilation stuff. But it could provide a solution for this, where you as the user can decide which version of Go you want to have for whatever reason.
Okay, yeah, I mean, this is very helpful. Okay, I have a tangent here that's related to that doc you're just talking about. I've thought about this with Python, and now I'm thinking about it with Go. Would it be helpful to have the ability, like, to have an environment variable that says like URL, dependency URL, and just allow people to specify that anytime they want? So if for some reason a user using either Python or whatever, let's just say Go, they want to pull their dependency from some specific place that they've already done all the work that they want, and they know what they're getting is, you know, something specific. Is that what Daniel's talking about, or is it slightly different than that?
It's mostly what he's talking about. We have like a much more controlled and limited implementation of this that already does work, which is the dependency mappings functionality. The issue there is like, it's not about you have like your own different versions or like differently compiled versions of dependencies. It's like you want to host the same dependencies that Paketo has, but you want to do it inside your like corporate firewall or something like that. And so because of that, the URL has to change. But like at the end of the day, the checksum for the actual asset that gets downloaded is identical. And the dependency mapping like enforces that. But what you're talking about more is like, I just want the build pack to like use an entirely different set of dependencies that I host somewhere else. I just want to be able to like basically have my own, you know, dependencies metadata block that I can just drop into the build pack toml at runtime.
Yeah, like pass in the SHA and the URL at build time.
I suppose it's worth looking into that Google Doc and finding your way there. I think it's more involved than just having an environment variable for one particular dependency. It would really like turn the way Paketo Buildpacks manage dependencies from top to bottom. It's like, I think that the way for the Paketo community to provide the batteries included thing would probably be to have a builder that brings all these dependencies, because you would really get rid of them. Like, there wouldn't even be multiple JVM providing build packs any longer, because you just need one. That's already like most of the coding is anyway in that libjvm Go package. And then there would be only one, and you as a user or builder maintainer or platform provider could just put the Java virtual machine implementation at the right location and some metadata to it, and by that control what is used. So it's more than just a simple mechanism. But I guess it's worth a look, and then maybe give some more life to that doc if there's multiple sources of interest. Like I had a look at it myself because it sounded interesting, then like turned out that it's just not interesting enough to immediately throw a lot of work onto it and start to try driving it while there's still some other dependency management things ongoing. But if there is multiple people joining that, I could imagine join forces and actually do something there and get our hands dirty with that work as well. If that's relevant and interesting for more members of the community.
Yeah, I'm going to take a look at that. Yeah, I mean, like primarily, I just wanted to make sure I was doing what I'm doing right, and it sounds like I'm not. So I'll go and revisit it. And I think this is definitely a good discussion. So yeah, I will read through this and chime in.
Yeah, there's a couple recent changes on the CMB side that could make this like considerably easier for us to implement. Both of those being the recent RFC for builder environment variables that you basically can specify in your build image an environment variable. So we could use that to specify like, here is where a file is that describes the dependencies that I want. So then you could have your stack. If there was a custom stack, you could include your dependencies in it and then specify it as an environment variable there. And the other thing is stack extensions. So like you could define an extension, right? If we were to specify in our own stacks, this like location of where dependencies are, you could then define your own stack extension that maybe overrides that location at runtime, or adds your own file at the same location or something along those lines. So I don't know. There's a number of different ways to go about it. And I think Dan outlines like 2 or 3 different solutions at least. So it's worth checking out for sure.
Cool. Thank you.
How far, by the way, is the other work stream about dependency management? So is that blocking some thoughts like this for longer, or is it closing and getting to an end?
PHP is basically the only one that's left. And in the PHP runtime, like the language family, I think it's just PHP itself that is remaining. I think it's particularly gnarly because we package a bunch of like extra modules that can be dynamically loaded into the PHP environment at runtime. And so just getting all those things to compile and package correctly is a little bit of work, but once we get there, we're basically done. From there, we can then decide, what do we want to do as the next step for dependencies?
I wanted to jump in with a couple of thoughts on this. So firstly, in the Python world, there's an open source project also kind of like maintained by VMware that's like functions as a service, and that's for Java and Python. And they sort of ran into this issue, a similar but not quite the same issue. And they basically had to end up re-implementing like 3 Buildpacks in the Python ecosystem in their own build pack because they couldn't get the ordering of everything correct. Which is not a great solution, but like that is a way that they solve that problem. Secondly, Jericho, I'm not a Go maintainer, but it would probably be really useful to open an issue on GoDist and just kind of like sketch out the rough like problem statement you're looking at. I recognize there might be some like proprietary aspects to this that you don't want to share in public, but there might also be like a high level description because there's like multiple ways that I'm interpreting what you're saying, right? Like it could be you're recompiling Go from source with different flags. It could be that you're like just sort of taking the same Go distribution, but post-processing it, like unpacking the tarball and then doing something else. Like, and they have ramifications as to how you might solve this problem. And then like thirdly, like sort of the primary way that I would suggest solving this is essentially if you can fit into the existing dependencies in the Buildpack TOML and the kind of like, if the Buildpack will just work as is, then you're probably going to have the best experience if you essentially repackage the Buildpack with the new Buildpack TOML with your own dependencies. That will work only if your Go distribution like fits the same API the Buildpack expects, which is basically like untarring. But if it does fit that, then that's probably going to be a lot easier than sort of manually doing some extra like copy and pasting the GoDist Buildpack into your own Buildpack and kind of maintaining that. That is predicated on the assumption you're willing to maintain your own meta Buildpack, which I don't know if you are or not, right? So those are some. I'm happy to put these in like a written form. If you like open an issue, I can kind of go into some of these thoughts in more detail.
Yeah, no, I can definitely do that. I mean, it's good to have this feedback. I kind of did this without any input, and I was like, all right, it works, but something feels wrong about this. So this is really helpful.
Yeah, it's hard, especially when the Buildpack spec and the way the lifecycle implements it is like, you should do this, and like then the lifecycle doesn't enforce the correct behaviors for things. Then you're able to technically achieve certain outcomes, but you're like kind of left wondering, am I on like unstable ground here where they might just rip this out from under me at any moment?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I remember I actually created a separate folder and it deleted that extra folder, but it left the Go one. So I was like, all right, I can just replace the Go folder and I'm good. But like you said, this is not supposed to be allowed. So cool. Yeah, all right. I think that's all I have. I mean, I don't want to keep this going. This is a lot of good feedback. So thank you.
All right. A couple more items added. There's a question about roadmap process for 2023. Yeah, I was going to bring this up next week when we have our monthly roadmap meeting. But basically after that meeting, we're going to open like a forum discussion, just like we did the prior year, and just kind of solicit feedback about future roadmap, try to get people to, you know, vote on things, and we'll just kind of crowdsource the roadmap. We'll do it earlier than we did last year. Last year, it took us a while to get around to actually making that happen. But thank you for the reminder again. We'll be more proactive this year. And then once that's done, we'll just kind of like aggregate those things and again, have a blog post that just says here are kind of like the top level things that people are talking about that we'll have a focus on in the next year. And then we've got closing words. Thanks for the shirt. Yeah, I just noticed that you're wearing the shirt.
Yes. Yeah, it's the first meeting, I guess, that since the shirt arrived. So I thought, yeah, let's put it on and say thank you for also the stickers, right? I will distribute them in my team next time we meet. Thanks.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks for the shirt. I think I wore mine already and maybe didn't make a big deal out of it. So thanks.
Nice. We're glad you like them. All right.
Yes, decent quality.
Yeah. Yeah, mine's comfortable for sure. Okay. Any last minute items here? Doesn't sound like it. All right, then. We'll see you all next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.